Sam was a character. He had a story for everything. The type of person that would help you in any given situation. We have fun together. You know, we're a family of, you know, we're very close and we have a lot of fun. And I miss that so much. And it just kills me that I don't have it anymore. You are giving these kids, and that's what they are, kids, alcohol, and they can't handle it. I say if they're drunk and they're driving, it should be mandatory jail time. The only thing that I could say to a parent that lost a child would be that it's not going to get better. You're just going to learn to live with it. And it's a day-by-day process.
The age limit for alcohol is based on research which shows that young people react differently to alcohol. Teens get drunk twice as fast as adults, but have more trouble knowing when to stop. Teens naturally overdo it and binge more often than adults. Enforcing the legal drinking age of 21 reduces traffic crashes, protects young people's maturing brains, and keeps young people safer overall. Retailers can take steps to make sure that teens can't buy alcohol from their stores, and they can serve as a source of information to reduce the possibility that alcohol legally sold to an adult will end up in a teenager's hand. Responsible retailing practices are key to preventing illegal alcohol sales, but it takes more than just telling your staff not to sell to minors. Responsible retailers need specific policies backed up by training and accountability that enable staff to say, if I sell to you, I'll lose my job. In 2012, an Apollo Beach convenience store, Best for Less Foods, was hit with a record $716 million verdict for selling alcohol to a 17-year-old driver who crashed into another car, killing 32-year-old Sammy Garcia. Sammy was an incredible human being who was full of life and a joy to be around. Everyone in the community, everyone who had ever met him, loved Sammy. His family was extremely close. Sammy built and raced cars as a hobby, but only ran on the track. Ironically, he was killed by a kid in a souped-up Camaro, racing while drunk on a city street. This $716 million verdict sends a message to other vendors across the country, and that message is, here's what's going to happen to you if you sell liquor illegally to minors. The verdict also sends a message on the egregious conduct of the defendants, the societal impact of this type of conduct, and how this verdict can help bring positive change. Today, the Insider exclusive investigative TV series presents illegal liquor sales, Sammy Garcia's story, and how his lawyers, Bill Gilbert, partner at Gilbert Dano Law Firm, and Rolando Santiago, founder of the RLS Law Group, got justice for Sammy and his family, proving a very challenging and emotional case, and earning them the highest respect from citizens and lawyers alike as some of the best trial lawyers in America. They have seen many innocent, hardworking people suffer needless injury, and because of that, they are driven to help people who have been harmed by the negligent actions of others. Their goals, not only to get justice for Sammy Garcia and his family, but to make sure all retailers follow the laws and specific corporate policies backed up by training and accountability. They have built a substantial reputation by consistently winning cases other law firms have turned down. Their amazing courtroom skills and headline-grabbing success rate continue to provide their clients with the results they need and the results they deserve. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Apollo Beach, Florida. It is my great pleasure today to introduce Bill Gilbert and Rolando Santiago to the show. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit, tell our audience a little bit about your firms. Bill, you have two separate firms. What type of law does your firm usually practice?
Well, we practice catastrophic personal injury, wrongful death. We do some civil rights cases and a little bit of employment law, but our major focus is on wrongful death and catastrophic injury cases.
Right, and although we are filming this in Apollo Beach, Florida, your office is in Washington, right?
Washington State, yes, sir.
Moses Lake.
Well, our main office is in Moses Lake. We have offices in Seattle, and then I have an office in Spokane as well.
Okay, and Rolando, what type of law does your law firm usually practice?
Our practice is split almost evenly between administrative, contractual litigation and support, and personal injury, with the focus that we cater heavily to the Hispanic market here in the Tampa Bay area.
Today we're here on a case where unfortunately a young man, 32-year-old Sammy Garcia, was killed by a drunk driver. You got a record verdict of $716 million, almost unheard of. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about first who Sammy Garcia was?
Sammy was a local guy here in Apollo Beach, oldest son, only son of Sam and Sally Garcia, a little sister of Selena. Worked for Caterpillar, her local company, hockey player, very avid hockey player, worked a lot with the hockey groups in the area. Very, very well liked individual in the community. Anybody who ever knew Sammy Garcia loved Sammy Garcia. I didn't, unfortunately, have a chance to get to know Sammy until after I started working in the case, and I grew to love Sammy very much through the process. He was just that kind of personality. Just
Real
a
giving.
great guy. Yes, very much so.
Rolando, tell us what happened on the day of the accident.
On the evening of the accident, Sammy was leaving a local restaurant. He had had dinner with his fiancée. He was alone in his car, driving a Chevrolet Caprice Classic, a large car. And he was on the apron of the parking lot, getting ready to turn onto the local road coming out of the restaurant, when, in a flash, a Z28 Camaro came barreling from his left side and crashed almost T-bone style right into the driver's compartment of the car. It hit with such catastrophic force and energy that it pushed his vehicle, that Chevrolet car, sideways about 12 to 15 feet and forced it through a large electrical box that was about 4 feet by 4 feet, shearing the electrical box off its concrete casing, and then impaling the vehicle and shearing the cables, impaling Sammy's vehicle on top of the caisson. The force of that impact traveled through the car, and that's what resulted in his death. But his body didn't suffer a lot of trauma, but the energy traveled into his body and caused the internal damages that resulted in his death in approximately 10 to 15 minutes after the impact.
We see this happen across America, where you have drunk drivers. They injure, they always survive. I don't know why they survive, but they injure and kill other people. And the reason we want to do this story is sometimes a verdict, no matter what the size of the verdict, can really send a message. And I think in this particular verdict, and this is what I want to talk about, both of you got a record $716 million. And I want you to tell our audience, Bill, how you explained the importance of the jury and what message they could send to society and what message they could send to the defendants, both the driver and the liquor store that sold the liquor illegally to the young 17-year-old boy.
Well, there was a lot that went into that. I mean, we had 3 years of work on this case, and I think that to get to that, we kind of have to know a little bit about the dynamics, the underlying dynamics of the case. We're talking about a 17-year-old kid who left school early on the afternoon in question, went down to a local convenience store, purchased a 12-pack of beer, went with his friends down to the beach, drank that beer, went back to the convenience store, bought another 12-pack of beer and some malt liquor, went back down to the beach, drank some more, and then got in a It was a Z28 Camaro, actually, and on a 35-mile-an-hour street, with residential street, was doing 98 miles an hour when his foot came off the gas. He never touched the brakes when he crashed into our client and killed him. We're about a mile from the high school where this location is. The local establishment that sold the liquor has a reputation, we were able to establish with the kids at the high school, of selling alcohol to minors. And what they would do is the kids would come into the liquor store or come into the store, they would tell them what they wanted. The person managing the store at the time was one of the defendants. They would take the alcohol in the back, package it in paper bags or boxes so that the public couldn't see what they were doing. The kids had to pay cash, and they had to pay a premium. So if it was $5 for a 12-pack of beer, they'd have to pay $8 or $10 for the beer. And then it was packaged behind the counter, and they would carry it out. So they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
They were doing it intentionally, and they were doing it for profit. And I think the jury got a hold of that. And then if you combine in the factors of, from my place as a trial lawyer, this was an ideal set of circumstances for me because I had a catastrophic injury and death to an individual who was very highly respected and liked in the community, who had an incredible family. So I had great clients, I had great facts, and that this was just not only a tragedy, but it was socially, well, disgusting is a good word for it, the way that these people were acting. And I think the jury got a hold of that, and through the process of the trial, just got more and more angry and frustrated with the defendants because the defendants denied through the process. And eventually, they came out and did send a message. I also think that through the trial process, I was fortunate. We drew a judge very much an old school kind of judge who lets attorneys pick their jury. And what I'm talking about during the voir dire process, when you interview the panel and you can eliminate certain jurors, I had an opportunity to speak with the jury for probably an hour and 10 minutes, and connected at many levels with the jury during that process. Was able to very much personalize what had happened, the tragedy of the accident, with the jury, and then throughout the process of the case, bring that out with different elements through expert witnesses and by lay witnesses. And by the time I got to closing, it was just a matter of how much.
Yeah. Now, across the country in wrongful death cases, you rarely see a verdict like this. How did you explain to the jury what they could award, what was it based on, as well as the rule of punitive damages in relation to what they could reward?
Well, we got out ahead of it in this case. Once I recognized that the judge was going to give me free rein in voir dire, and kind of, he actually did rein me in at one point during voir dire when we were talking about punitive damages. But when the panel started talking about damages and the greedy lawyer question comes up, one of the things that I talk about in voir dire with almost every case, especially the big cases, are the Ford Pinto case, the McDonald's coffee cases, the cases that got a lot of publicity that people look at and go, well, that's silly. Well, the reality of it is most people don't know the facts of the McDonald's coffee case. And once I get an opportunity to explain that to them on the jury, it just changes the whole complexion of what damages means for them. In this case, I got out ahead on the damages issue and talked about those kinds of things with the panel. And I also was fortunate that about a year and a half prior to my trial, there was a big verdict in a neighboring county down here in Florida where a mother of a girl who was killed in a drunk driving accident was awarded $1 million a year for the remainder of her life for emotional pain and suffering for the loss of her daughter. So that gave me a benchmark to work with.
It was like total verdict with $333 million or something.
Yes, that's correct. And what I did was I asked the jury if anyone had heard of that verdict, and then we started discussing that verdict. So that gave them a benchmark of $1 million a year to think about.
And a lot of people are unaware that they can award a lot of money like this, because if you lost your own son or daughter, what's the value of that? There is no value. It's priceless.
That's the difficulty of it.
There was a number, though. Sammy was a hockey player.
That's correct.
His number was 44.
That's correct.
That number kind of figured in
Yes, it did.
how you told the jury how they should, or what number they should come up. Tell our audience a little about that.
Well, during closing argument, I had just about completed my closing argument, and I was turning to walk back over to my table to summarize, and I looked over on the what I call the peanut gallery, but the stanchion between the where the people in the audience or watching sit. There's a panel right there, and on top of that, and I had forgotten it was even there, was one of Sammy's hockey jerseys. It was white, and it was folded up. And when I turned to walk back over to the table, it was almost glowing, and I saw it sitting there, and it just occurred to me at that moment, because it was literally glowing. I walked over and I picked it up, and I walked over to the jury panel, and they had seen a lot of very intense video about Sammy and been through a very traumatic, tear-jerking kind of trial. And I walked up to the panel, and I had the jersey in my hand, and I said, I told you at the beginning of this trial, I'm not going to give you a number. That's going to be up to you. But before this is over and done with, and I snapped Sammy's jersey open and had Garcia cross the back in 44. I said, I want this number to be in that verdict someplace. I don't care if it's 44 cents.
Right.
In honor of Sammy and for Sammy, I want this number someplace in that verdict.
Yeah.
And the first number they came back with was $44 million for pre-death pain and suffering for Sammy. So that played an impact on things.
Well, congratulations to both of you on that. Today we have with us Sammy's mom, Sally.
Yes.
And I'd like to bring her on right now so we can talk a little with her. It is my great pleasure to introduce Sally Garcia to the show. Welcome to the show, Sally. My condolences for losing your son. We talked before the show, and one of the reasons that I love doing these shows is to have folks like yourself, parents. Sometimes they lose their children, sometimes they're severely injured, and to let the world know that there is a justice system out there that can bring justice. Sometimes never can bring back the person, but luckily you have excellent lawyers who really get involved with the personal side and can identify with your son. Take us back to that day when you first heard
When
what
I
happened.
found out?
Yeah, when you
It
first
was very odd,
Yeah.
the way I found out.
How was it?
I was home.
Yeah.
It was 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I was going to go to bed, and the phone rang, and it was a friend of my son's. And he asked me where Sam was. And I said, oh, he's probably with his girlfriend, because he said he wasn't answering his phone.
Yeah. And he lived at home, didn't he?
Yes, he still
Yeah.
lived at home.
Okay.
And so he was like, oh, he said, well, Danny is another friend. He said he called him and said that he thought he saw Sam's car on the 10 o'clock news, that it was in an accident. And so I was like, what? And so then he was like, he told me, he said Apollo Beach, in Apollo Beach. And I know that my son and his girlfriend used to come to the Circles restaurant. So I was like, I'm gonna go there, So he was like, no, wait, let me call Danny back and see what he says. So I was like, well, I'm getting ready to leave. So I went to leave, and the phone rang again, and it was Danny. And he said he was on his way here.
Yeah.
But he was already here. So I said, well, I'm coming. So he was like, okay, just, drive careful, it's okay, whatever. So I drove here, and when I got out, the detective told me.
If you had a chance to tell the defendant, the young man, 17-year-old, who caused this accident, right now on national TV, what would you tell him?
Well, I would let him know that my family and I, we do pray for him to, when he comes out, to make good decisions. Because, of course, that day he made the worst decision of his life.
Right.
So we do pray for that. And that's all I can say, is that I hope that when he comes out, he realizes the way he devastated our family, and that he can you know, make right decisions in his life then.
Yeah. Your lawyers, Bill and Rolando, got a record verdict, you know, over $700 million. What does that message send to America, that type of verdict?
I hope it sends the message that, you know, people, how can I say it?
People take seriously
Yeah, it's serious, and that
the
you
loss
know,
of life,
the
or
loss of life, and
catastrophic injuries.
your family has changed forever.
Yeah.
There's, you know, your life is just in turmoil forever.
How has your life changed?
My life has changed in many different ways. I mean, I don't have the same life in. My son and I had a close relationship. You don't have many 30-year-olds who tell their mother, "Oh, come and hang out with me at the hockey rink." You know, we always did things like that together, and it was our time. So I don't have that anymore. So it's difficult for me.
I want to thank you very much for coming on the show today. And again, my condolences to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask both of you, what sort of message does this verdict send America?
I'll start with that. Well, we talked a little bit about the jury earlier and how we got to the verdict. Statistics played a big role in that. And Florida has some of the highest drinking and driving for minors, deaths related, accidents related statistics in the United States. And it's billions of dollars it costs the economy in Florida every year as a result of drinking and driving for juveniles.
And I think people need to understand one thing. When you say it costs the economy billions of dollars, people are injured. Who takes care of them? Who pays that? Oftentimes, the healthcare system that we have, Medicare pays, right?
Correct.
So you have somebody on a life plan that a vendor should really be paying, or an insurance company should really be paying, but society is paying.
Sure.
And I'm surprised to hear that Florida has one of the highest rates of young people getting into accidents, drunk driving. You live here. You've heard this before, right?
Yes, quite a bit.
What message do you think this verdict sends America?
The ability to prosecute a dram shop case successfully is very difficult.
And
So
define for our audience, dram shop, please.
that is a claim that you bring to a vendor of alcoholic beverages.
Okay.
Typically,
Could be a bar,
could be a bar.
could be a liquor store.
Rarely are they held accountable.
Yeah,
The message is accountability,
yeah,
because the facts in this case were such that you had a vendor who was brazenly, wantonly,
Yeah.
openly, and established a modus operandi for the sale of alcohol to minors.
because of greed.
Yeah.
Greed.
Because of greed.
It's all about greed.
It's going to hold those retail establishments accountable, and it reminds them the law is in place for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
They sold to a minor, don't do it.
Yeah. Well, you guys did a great job, and I really appreciate you spending time with us today. And we certainly hope you prosecute other cases and are as successful with them too. Thank both of you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.